Contrary to frighteningly popular opinion, speed is not the metric of success, though many managers and project leads still use it as the yardstick by which successful delivery is measured. It's worth mentioning at this point that speed is a surrogate metric that translates to time and cost. But for the purpose of this article, I will conflate them as speed. Not a single successful solution ever started with the question, what's the quickest solution I can create? Though that's often exactly the question that's asked. Time is a limitation that we often have to factor in, but speed is not the answer to it. I know that sounds weird. The vast majority of projects are delivered late, go over budget or end up abandoned because of this one mistaken metric. The problem is that speed is a good metric for successfully delivering a project, but speed is a disastrous metric for delivering a successful project. Don't build what's quick, build what's necessary. And how do you judge what's necessary? You don't, your users do. It doesn't have to be necessary to you, it has to be necessary to your users. And that's where value and strategy should meet. What's necessary to employees are a job and money. The people that make those happen are your users. They make that happen by wanting what you sell. I know that sounds really oversimplified when I say it like that, but it's something that gets lost in translation of doing the work. It is, quite frankly, terrifying how often I have to remind stakeholders, product owners, delivery teams, etc. of this one important, and you'd think obvious, fact. But in the cut and thrust of delivering value for the team or project, they forget that they are subsequently not delivering value for the customer. And though they are an outdated and poorly used artifact, personas were originally invented to stop this happening, though I don't recommend using them ever. User types. It's not management's fault, of course. They're held hostage to this middle management success metric of speed, which, again, is time and money. They're held hostage to this by the business and the business leaders, who have little else to go on. If only they had a reliable way to measure the return on investment. But more on that in another post. The question is not how quickly can we build a product and service. The question is how quickly can we build a product or service that the user wants. The real metric of success? Well, the real metric of success, I'll try and say that again in English. The real metric of success is efficacy. It can be clearly identified and understood by proper UX research, defined by UX functional architecture, and measured and validated by UX usability testing. Those who prioritise speed over efficacy end up delivering neither. And at the same time, value, reputation and competitive advantage are lost. Worse than that, it means your competitors can beat you by prioritising modern UX themselves and delivering a more compelling and competitive solution than your company. Your goal is not speed. I refer you again to your wife. Your goal is to deliver something that cannot be easily competed with because it solves the problems the user needs. It cannot be improved upon. So, there are limitations. And I recognise that there are time and financial limits on every company and product. But project and business leaders are too quick to cut anything that superficially slows down the start of development, in the belief that somehow this will get them to the market quicker, and that quicker equals better. Quicker is not better. First, you need to understand the requirements and the scope. Then, evaluate what the metric or metrics of success are for the user and the business in that environment. UX research and architecture will tell you this. Then, and only then, examine how delivery of that success, those success metrics, is limited by the time and money available. You'd be amazed how often we've done UX project postmortems, discovering that if we'd not cut corners, UX invariably being one of them, before going to development, we would have delivered all the functionality the user needed, not a poor MVP or complete code failure. The types of speed are many, but I'm going to cover some of the basic ones. Speed comes in many forms. Methodologies like Agile, Lean and design thinking have sprung up to manage the compromises caused by the metric of speed. However, only modern UX actually negates it completely, if it's carried out properly and holistically. Design thinking has done nothing to dethrone the false prophet of speed or prevent this culture of anti-research. In fact, it enables the behaviour, encouraging a quick workshop period with everyone that delivers no real insight, but lots of opinions. It delivers no validation, and it empowers project leaders to say they've done research and quickly get the development team up and coding something that doesn't address the valuable issues because they haven't really been researched at all. They just sat around and agreed they'd all like to do something. Agile was created to express how important it was to understand and build to the user's needs, and to give the developers a fighting chance of delivering something useful in the face of the overriding speed metric. I know, I used to be a developer. There was no real concept of UX or the UX discipline when Agile came into being, but there was an understanding that the principles of UX were missing in most projects before going to code. Of course, by the time the project rolls into developer town, it's too late to insist on the importance of understanding the user's needs. Modern UX makes sure that user needs are fully understood before coding begins. Literally a principle of Agile. It even streamlines the Agile process. But that is absolutely another talk, another post, and another chapter. Think of modern UX as project lube. It makes it easier, less painful, quicker, and ultimately more enjoyable for those on the receiving end: developers, POs, system architects, users, etc. There are a number of mistakes made when people try to implement speed, and I'm going to go through a few of those now. Speed mistake number one: assumption. Well, actually, assumption is rule number one. Never assume anything. But far too many project leaders, project managers, product owners, account executives, etc. have a superficial conversation focused on what they can sell rather than what the client might actually need. And then they want to get straight to coding a solution as it exists in their head, or as it fits a product they're thinking of that they already sell. It's often contemptfully declared that UX research is a waste of important development time, which is much like suggesting that looking left and right is a waste of important road crossing time. They both end with the same results. It's suggested that UX research will only delay the project, the development, and reduce speed. There are a couple of reasons for this in my experience. Some people just want to sell products that their company already make. Their job is not to understand what the user needs, but to understand how they can shoehorn their existing solutions into the client's problem statement, or shape the client's problem statement to fit their existing solutions, regardless of the efficacy of the outcome. They get paid to shift boxes. Their professional success metrics are directly in conflict with what the user needs, or they confidently pronounce that they know the client's pain points, having had a workshop or a coffee with them, regaling the delivery team with their own bosses with how well they've divined the perfect solution. I'm a user too, after all. All they really need now is a subservient delivery team, a deadline, and some budget in order to guarantee a successful solution. And they'll use that Agile buzzword to deliver it. But more on that later. They are taking a punt and dressing it up as insight and opportunity. And, overconfidence. With a hefty sprinkling of buzzwords. They are motivated by the professional metric of landing as much work as possible. They do not have to worry about delivering it. Those are two separate metrics, and that's a problem. This is also obviously not the metric of success. Still, it is the metric by which their professional efficacy is measured by their bosses. And as you can see, it very often is in conflict with the metrics of success for the organisation, the customer and the user. Metric alignment, or rather misalignment, is a keystone problem in nearly all businesses. But again, that's a different blog, post or chapter. I'll come back to that. By the end of many projects, especially the big, meaningful enterprise ones, much has been missed because critical UX research was undermined or not done to allow development to begin quickly. In the end, there is simply lots of finger pointing and a growth in the blame culture. Managers and leaders can't understand why the project turned out so badly, or don't want to admit it to their bosses. So they learn nothing. They wait for the next buzzword methodology to magically save them. Design thinking, value stream mapping, Wardley mapping, whatever it might be. But they never address the underlying problem, so it never can save them. And they still fail to recognise that speed was actually the root cause of the failure, not the metric for success. Speed mistake number 2, standing up the development team too early. This happens all the time. Another persistent example of the speed metric problem is when a project leader gets the development team coding as soon as they physically can, well before they actually know what they are supposed to be creating, quoting Agile as their mantra, failing fast and failing often, and compromising or ignoring UX, obviously, because it gets in the way. UX research, as I say, gets in the way of development because, and this is a quote, because they're wasting time understanding and validating what's most valuable, what's most competitive. But that means the development team are sitting around burning money if we wait for UX to finish. That's not what happens. If they stand them up too early, then they will sit around waiting for UX to finish. Don't stand up an expensive development team before your UX is halfway through. That is also another post. Delivery team leaders try to stand up an expensive development team and their expensive development environment to code a working version of proof of concept and minimum viable product. This is not good Agile. Read the Agile manifesto and you'll see. They believe that this is the quickest way to get a product built because they are superficially going straight to code. That's what will be delivered, right? Of course, it takes 3 times longer to do this and it costs 10 times as much to do it because they aren't sure of what they need to build. So they iterate till they run out of time and money. And eventually they wheel out the hackneyed old phrase, "We just have to deliver something." And there's more. Because they didn't have a clear understanding of what they need to build, they not only have to guess at the functionality, building unnecessary functionality, or failing to build required functionality, they also have to guess what skills the dev team will need. They have to guess what technologies they will need to use. They have to guess how big the development team will need to be. And they have to guess how long it will take to build the unknown solution. And they have to agree to do all these unknowns to the preset, very well known, though made up on the spot, deadline and budget. So what do they base that deadline and budget on, given that they know nothing? That's right, guesswork, because those people don't have to do the delivery. So, my suggestion is this: get a single, cheap UXer, relatively cheap, to do this with a single piece of cheap software, Axio, and test with actual users. It's quicker, it'll produce correct results, it's cheaper, and in the end, it's more accurate. And no one has to guess anything, and I mean anything. This is the single most efficient way to deliver a project. Of course, the delivery team on the ground will also try to push back on anything that ingresses on their professional integrity to deliver the best product, using best practices. It's one of the main reasons for the invention of Agile, actually. But soon they'll fall victim to the same insidious metric of speed and the blind denial of leadership that there is any other way to do this. Failing, more speed. The consequences of this are that the problem is that proceeding to development as quickly as possible and then attempting to correct the many false assumptions as they're uncovered is not just suboptimal. It's also not the purpose of Agile. It leads to inefficient Frankenstein code. And sometimes it leads to undeliverable code and project failure. It also leads to frustrated developers, compromised utility, an increase in technical challenges, technical debt, software bugs, a requirement for more time and more money, ironically, a less intuitive solution, and consequently a very significant increase in the requirement for support of the product once it's gone live. And ultimately, it leads to unhappy customers, unhappy users, which will cost the company reputation and cause long-term reputational damage. All of which can be avoided by the proper application of UX. Mistake number 3. Agile. But not Agile the noun, Agile the verb. How often have you experienced middle or project management trying to twist the very processes, methodologies and ideals you use to ensure great products and services to confirm their own opinions? Agile is one of these classic examples of this. They use Agile as a verb, not as a noun. They tell you that Agile means being quick and not wasting time with, stupid things like planning or UX. Managers and others are quick to use Agile the verb and Agile the noun interchangeably. If challenged, project managers and leaders commonly defend the straight-to-code approach with the glib quip, "We're supposed to be Agile," the verb, as though building something before anyone knows what that something should be or do is Agile the noun. Of course, Agile, the noun, tells us that no coding should be carried out while the user needs are in doubt. That would be no coding should be carried out before the UX is done. Agile supports this. So how do project leaders reconcile the perceived paradox of their speed versus doing it right for efficacy? Well, it's simple. They ignore it and they ask us that we go faster. They ask us to go faster to make up for the delays that have been caused by prioritising speed over efficacy in the first case. So essentially, go faster because going faster slowed us down. They simplistically jettison anything that takes time at this point, regardless of its importance for ensuring that efficacy. UX is usually the first thing to go. I'll give you an analogy. You're in a passenger plane that's crashing towards the ground. If you immediately jettison the engines because of the simplistic assumption that they are the heaviest things, and thus must be the things dragging you down, what would the outcome be? Yeah. They quote tired mantras like, fail fast, fail often. But what they're making you do is fail immediately and fail always. This is not necessary if you do proper UX first. Developers do not need to fail at all. They drive the MVP acronym by the M, minimum, not the V, viable or valuable. They start to use adjectives like just and only, suggesting that successful delivery is a simple task, only just out of reach, revealing that their grasp of development process is tenuous at best. They can only see a deadline, and all integrity and mindfulness are lost in the rush to make their superiors and stakeholders happy with their ability to deliver on a metric that's an act of sabotage, not a North Star to success: speed. The end user is an inconvenience that can and will be ignored. This is project operational expenditure being prioritised over customer satisfaction, organisational growth and revenue. Do not believe the dime store psychology and the attempts to excuse total lack of planning or understanding by using Agile as a verb to pressure the delivery team or anyone else on the delivery to produce miracles in the face of impossible deadlines and poorly understood requirements. It shouldn't require a talk to let you know this, right? The effect. Basic efficacy trips them up and undermines this superficial methodology. Inevitably, the client and the user want to see the solution and that it delivers on their needs and their expectations before it goes live. When the client or user sees the current solution, they pick big glaring holes in its usability and utility, holes that wouldn't exist if UX research had been carried out and had not been cut for slowing down development. And that's when we see new requirements suddenly appearing. These are not new requirements at all, of course. They are requirements that should and would have been uncovered if proper UX research had been carried out, saving a ton of development time and the development team a lot of wasted money, guesswork and code rewrites, that are generally affectionately labelled iterations. Iterations that leave the solution with unnecessary technical debt. As the project progresses and lack of data, UX research and insight crystallises into confusion, changing requirements, lack of clear deliverables, and clouded direction. The default decision-making tool, of course, becomes knee-jerk assumption, and much important utility is never uncovered, or is uncovered too late and cannot be implemented in time. Speed is blindly given an even greater priority, as it's the only thing that can be reliably measured without the insights that come from user experience research. This spirals quickly out of control, and in the ensuing panic, project leaders blindly insist that the developers deliver the additional deliverables, the additional insights and functionality that have come to light through this live testing and iteration, and all to the same original impossible deadline. They don't care how. At this point, they generally remind the dev team or the delivery team of the Agile verb. Developers end up working long, unnecessary hours. Tempers are frayed, and there are often lots of management soundbites like, "We've got to pull together as a team," or "We've just got to make this happen," or "We're going to have to work this weekend." But obviously you are, but I'm not. Of course, "I thought you were supposed to be agile." And one of my favourites, "It's only a simple change." Teams begin to close ranks and prepare their blame statements, practicing them even before the deadline. All totally unnecessary if UX is allowed to do its work in advance, delivering efficacy, which ultimately produces the speed you're after. The developers not only have to add these new, unresearched functionalities, but they have to factor it into the current code. It is, if you don't already know this, immensely inefficient to refactor or rewrite code in order to solve a different or modified problem. Discovering new requirements during coding is just about the single most expensive, slow and unreliable way to create a successful solution, but a brilliant way to guarantee failure. And it doesn't matter how fast you do that. Maybe that's the point. As the project progresses, the drag of poor choices made on poor or no UX increases, and so does the cost and reputational damage. It would be difficult to think of a better way to sabotage a project. It costs up to 10 times more to fix a problem in development than it would have done in UX, and it costs 100 times more to do so after the project goes live. None of this leads to actual speed, just more failure, more finger pointing, more demotivation, and obviously more reputational damage. Ironically, speedy delivery is not hindered by modern UX, it's ensured by it. So, I recommend that you embrace modern UX, good UX research, UX usability testing, and proper planning around the insights that UX reveals. The consequences? Well, never, not ever, even once, has speed led to an optimal solution or anything less than mediocrity. I've worked all over the world in every sector for hundreds of companies, and it's always the same. Maybe I'm the common denominator here. Cut that from the video. More often, it leads, ironically, to projects running out of time and money. But companies get away with it because they're all more or less working to the same broken success metric and same broken formula. And here again, you hear the mating call of project leaders panickers. We just have to deliver something. Well, that something will be curled up and steaming when the client receives it. But it'll be quick, and it'll be unfinished and not fit for purpose, and it'll overrun, and it'll be functionally compromised, and it'll cost you more money, and you've seen the pattern. The sales team, you remember them, they're the ones who are measured on landing work, not delivering it, will have to have some very uncomfortable discussions with unhappy clients about the delta between what they were promised and what they actually received. Here's another example of where lube helps. But as the deadline approaches and the unforeseen changes, the actual requirements that UX research would have uncovered in the beginning, as they mount up and developers work long, unappreciated, unnecessary hours to try to deliver something, there is a silver lining. Yes. And that silver lining is that all this professional drama, long hours, using Agile as a verb, is a team building, bonding, cathartic experience for the whole project delivery team. Many important lessons will be learned from the mistakes that will never be repeated again. And in the end, everyone will praise the developers for their hard work, long hours, and give them money and time off. And no, they won't. No, really. There will be no praise. Beyond possibly a superficial thank you email that will go to the managers instead of the people who actually did the work. The lesson that will be learned is that we need to do this quicker next time, because they will still believe that the lack of speed was the problem, not the lack of insight, not the lack of UX research and functional architecture that delivers real insight to what that utility should be. No, it was we didn't go fast enough. And they will expect the delivery team to grit their teeth and suck it up like real men and do it all again next time. Because next time it'll be faster, because next time they won't waste time with lube. And we all know how that turns out. Yeah, probably cut that too. What's the alternative? Well, lube, obviously. But business owners, stakeholders, project managers and leaders in general need to wipe out this speed will solve everything cultural pandemic and embrace the idea that a clean, accurate definition of the requirements, as delivered by UX, is the only thing that truly leads to real insight and thus successful solutions for the customer and for the business. A solution that people remember for its success, not for its failure or mediocrity. Or maybe not remember at all. I don't know which is worse. Anyway, a solution that will make the users and the business's lives better. I mean, that's what UX is about. It's about making the world a better place. And it will truly solve their problems. And a solution that will be faster, because your delivery team will have received validated insight into what to build. So they will build it right first time, with the optimal team, the optimal technologies, and the optimal outcome in the minimum required time. That's what you're after all along, right? The business will have valuable insights, so they will deliver something that has the utility users want, and they might even be able to use this for other projects. And happier clients leads to more money, more work. Surely that's obvious, right? I don't need to put that in here. Reputation and efficacy are everything to a business, and UX is a comprehensive and defined methodology for delivering them. You just have to employ modern UX methods and experts, not UI designers or unicorns. How a business delivers desired utility at optimal speed? Well, there's a couple of steps to that. Step 1. Recognise the critical importance and positive impact of UX research and allow sufficient time to carry it out. We use a formula and a spreadsheet, a template, to estimate the time required for UX research. It is data-driven and it's invariably accurate. And it's in my upcoming UX book, little plug there. It must be modern UX research based on function, value and utility, not UX UI, assumptive research based on empathy and delight and vomit, or academic research. Academic research doesn't always have an end. There's always more to research. It must be research designed transparently to uncover valuable insights and deliver those insights to project teams via consistent deliverable artifacts in formats that help those teams, those individual teams, do their jobs better and faster. And yes, speed is the outcome of modern UX. Step 2. UX functional architecture. UX design in old money. Design is a terrible word to use on UX. It leads to all sorts of misunderstandings about the fact that it's a visual. UX itself wouldn't change if it was a visual environment, a voice-based environment, a touch-based environment. UX is the same process, the same outputs, same everything. Requires no visual design. Visual designers have been here since the dawn of time doing visual design. They are not UXers. Don't buy into it. Also, don't stand up an expensive development team and their expensive infrastructure before you know what the requirements should be. It's very costly and invariably wrong, and no one wants to admit they did it too soon. So you end up just trying to deliver with the team you currently have and the technology they guessed at, to a deadline that has no relation to either. Involve a development team lead. That's what we do in UX. We involve a lead developer in a consultancy capacity during this phase, so they can evaluate the technology, the team requirements, etc. From UX research insights. They can accurately estimate the time and cost required from the ongoing UX functional architecture, so user journeys, functional prototypes, usability testing, and it allows them to specify the right technologies, the right team size, the right skills, the right team shape, with the maximum lead time, saving more time and more money. It's a powerful collaboration between architects and engineers, between UX and development, and it's where most of the time and money is saved. Modern UX empowers the right people and processes that deliver the best solution in the least time by giving them the data and the insight they need to do their jobs well. The iteration process, as specified in Agile, well, UX usability testing needs to be carried out to validate and refine the solution before beginning the expensive process of actually building it. Because, as mentioned, trying to integrate changes into the existing code that was built on a different set of requirements is insanely inefficient. It's difficult, it's expensive, and it's plain unsuccessful. Iterating through the failed tests in a quick, cheap, real-time UX prototype, built with quick, cheap UX prototyping tools, Agile, is, guess what? Quick and cheap, and produces the most accurate results, so the developers can build from fully formed user stories that are right first time. And, did I mention user stories? Modern UX teams create tested, validated, functional user stories into the Agile and Scrum environment that will not need to change because they've been tested. That was the iteration. The developers and engineering teams can reliably produce technical stories on the back of those. There will be no need to iterate through unforeseen changes because there will be none. Your expensive dev team will be able to function effectively and deliver optimally because they will know with confidence what they need to deliver before they get started coding. It will reduce development time by up to 60%. The results will not just be desired by the users, they will have been tested with the users beforehand to prove that they are desired, to prove that they're utilitarian, to prove that they're valuable to the user and the business. You will deliver guaranteed success. Following these simple steps, embracing modern UX and allowing UX to do their job before rushing to code will deliver the following. Utility your users want, and more importantly, that they are willing to part with time and money for. A valuable product or service delivered into your portfolio. Increased customer satisfaction and brand reputation. Decreased support requirements. And it will give you a competitive advantage in the marketplace that's near impossible to better. Significant measurable return on investment. Measurable return on investment. That is another post. An effective, repeatable blueprint for optimal project delivery for all the projects, not just this one. And finally, last but by no means least, embracing modern UX will ensure the fastest possible delivery of something successful, not just something curled up and steaming. If this article speaks to your beliefs or experience, or you want to know more, and you want to become a better UXer, and hobnob with good UXers who are not UX UI unicorns, please join the UX Sanctuary user group. It's on Meetup. If you go to Meetup and just type in UX Sanctuary, you'll find it. I welcome all of you to come along, give your experiences, learn from the others. It'll be launching soon, so thank you for listening.